England, home to the oldest monarchy in the history of the world. They're known for playing lord over half of the globe, and while their victories may have brought considerable wealth to the Great Britain, one allyship almost made them convert to Islam. 800 years ago, the youngest son of Henry II, John, was made the King of England after his brother, Richard the Lionheart, died. With the crown came a lot of obvious benefits, but unfortunately, all King John was left with was an empty bag of wealth. His brother, Richard, was a very poor king for England, in all senses of that word. He didn't spend more than 10 months of his 10-year reign in England and drained all the money in foreign battles. So once John became king in 1199, he had a lot of land to defend, but no money or armed resources to do so. For 2 years, he struggled to maintain his power at the throne and control over his assets. However, the mountain of debt came crashing down 2 years later. In 1202, King John lost Normandy, Maine, and almost all his other possessions in France in a battle with Philip II, the French king. But despite his poor status, King John had tried his best to win the war. He imposed heavy taxes on the barons of England, which put them under pressure and squeezed every penny out of them. Struggling with the barons, King John somehow angered the Pope and was excommunicated out of the church. By this time, not only had he lost the wealth, he also lost his ties to European powers. Not to mention, England was placed under an interdict, by which all forms of worship and other religious practices were banned. Parts of the country were in revolt, and there were threats of a French invasion. What could he possibly do now that would help him keep his throne? Find an international ally. He scoured the routes of Europe to find a ruler with a common connection. In 1212, his search landed him in Morocco. It was the only nation besides Spain and France that had both Atlantic and Mediterranean coastlines. Bingo. Wasting no time, King John secretly sent 3 of his best envoys to the court of Muhammad al-Nasir, the 4th Almohad Sultan. One of the envoys was Master Robert Fitzwalter, a cleric. Here comes the good part. Master Robert negotiated with Caliph al-Nasir to offer military aid to England, and in exchange, King John would not only abandon his Christian faith, he would also convert to Islam and be faithful to the law of Muhammad. The stench of the king's desperation absolutely disgusted the emir of Morocco. He suspected that a king with such low values would never amount to a strong discipline in their ties. After considerable discussion with the envoys, al-Nasir rejected the offer. All of them went home, except for Master Robert. He whispered to the Moroccan emir how King John was a tyrant ruler, a bloodhound, and extremely poor. Impressed by his honesty, al-Nasir rewarded him with quite a few treasures. Blind to Robert's greed and malicious behavior, King John appreciated the envoy and gave him more gifts. However, in 1212, Robert Fitzwalter was found guilty of plotting to kill King John, outlawed and exiled to France. There, Robert met with Matthew Paris, an English monk. Robert supposedly opened up his heart to him and narrated the tale of King John and the Islamic England. Back at King John's home, the barons found out about everything that had transpired behind their back, the treachery and the poor financial planning. In 1215, they rebelled against King John's heavy taxes and brought him to heel. The Magna Carta was drafted, and on 15 of June, King John signed the first Bill of Rights for the United Kingdom. It basically constrained the power of everyone in the monarchy and established that no one was above the law, no matter their position of sovereignty. How did the world come to know about the tale? Well, Matthew Paris was a writer at heart and had been so intrigued by Robert's experience, he noted it down. The manuscript was published 6 centuries later by the name Chronica Majora. The author has been deemed as England's greatest medieval historian. Because of its antique nature, a few historians believe the tale has been exaggerated and that King John may have negotiated military aid but never offered England to be an Islamic caliphate. Modern historians recognize Matthew Paris's work wasn't always reliable. But like Shakespeare says, desperate times breed desperate measures. Given the state of King John's struggle, it's not entirely impossible that England may have become an Islamic caliphate, had it not been for the binding treaty of Magna Carta. How amazing would it have been if England had actually converted to Islam, no? History has shown time and time again how impactful the influence of the monarchy is. Islam didn't actually lose all in the 13th century. A few years later, after England's unfortunate times, a struggle broke out among the Ilkhans of the Mongol Empire. They patronized all religious persuasions, from Christians and Jews to Sunnis and Shias. Then, in 1295, a Buddhist named Mahmud Ghazan became Khan. As soon as he took the throne, Mahmud declared he had become a Muslim, which made the Mongol notables to follow the faith of Allah as well. Mahmud Ghazan promoted Islamic education and fostered legendary writers like Rashid ad-Din. He was a Muslim physician, a scholar, and later Mahmud's best minister who authored the world's most famous Persian universal histories. Mahmud Ghazan had single-handedly converted his whole state to Islam, and that's not even half of all that he is known for. The Muslim ruler loved ilm and was intrigued by the creation of Allah. He conversed with intellectuals on a variety of topics, from natural history and astronomy to medicine and chemistry. He also worked his hands into several handicrafts. When he wasn't learning art, the great Ghazan was winning wars. His efforts brought together the Mongols and the Persians, ended the tyranny of the Ilkhanate, introduced administrative reforms to his empire, founded a postal system, rebuilt the revenue system, and so much more. Subhanallah, faith is mind-blowing.